All right, how to stop a behind the back pass, um, or behind the back shot. So moving on to the next clip here. Let me shrink my face. Shrinking my face. All right, and we go here. Look at me go. All right. Um, all right. So this clip is Rutgers. I don't know who they're playing. I should know those jerseys, and I apologize. I don't. If anybody knows those jerseys and want to leave me a comment, go right ahead. But the idea here is, yeah, um, this was disappointing to me. I'll play it live. So the ball's going to go to X, and then it's going to get fed side right, and behind the back goal. All right. So the joke was about this guy number 14 was he's like in his 6th year at Rutgers. I didn't look up who that was, but um, and when you're in your 6th year at Rutgers, things things become easy. I thought that was kind of funny. So all right. So a couple things here. Uh, Defensively, all right, for your goalies to just understand, and this is true for the girls as well. So, um, when you get a player like the Rutgers attackman here that has the ball, uh, the defender is in no man's land. Like they're not helping at all. They're not close enough to get a stick on the hands. And that was one of the things that I yelled constantly through high school. Was I constantly reminded my defenders to just get on their hands. And like if they're going to be a feeder, we can, a well-timed poke check, a rub of the glove, like surgeon, not lumberjack. The idea is that you can disrupt a pass, and instead of that pass hitting its target, if it's just 6 inches off target, which isn't much, right? Like this pass is like 20 yards. A little rub of the glove makes that pass like whoop, whoop, like by the time it hits, it goes to where it was intended. It could be like 2, 3, 4 feet off target, right? But we're just looking for 6 inches. Like that's not much at all, right? And but this defender here is neither close enough to the attackman, but also if he goes too far out, he might get dodged on if he's not very athletic. That's one thing to consider. All right. So, but he's also not. If he was closer to the cage, maybe he's in a better chance he has more time or distance to maybe pick the pass off. But so this feed comes and like and for the goalie's sake here, just you got to think of this. This is where a goalie is most vulnerable, and this is where, like, if you watch my video a couple weeks ago talking about, girl goalies playing, I think it was Emily uh, from BC, um, playing defense. I'm just not a fan of goalies trying to play defense because your team should be playing defense. And a feed like this, your team, all they've got to worry about is their cutters. Like they're not looking for a slide. The goalie's making those calls, and this is where teams just butcher it. And so for the goalie here, what I love here is the goalie makes the perfect pivot to the post, boink, and so as a goalie, your first job is to get to that post, but then you're not watching the ball, right? You're not watching the ball on path. You're you're turning and you're trying to pick up whoever's going to catch it, right? That's the deal. Right. And I didn't learn that till very late in my career, like, and too late to really do anything with it. But the idea is like you want to get to that post first, and you're on that 45-degree angle, so you're kind of hedging your bets on what you got to do next. But the idea is your head turning to find the body in that other team's jersey, and then you're trying to pick up the stick, and then you're trying to pick up the ball, and then you're staying. But one of the things that happens here, and what I wanted to talk about tonight, is this idea that as a goalie, sometimes visually you can become distracted by the body of the shooter, right? So if I put myself in this goalie's eyes right now and I think like, okay, I've pivoted and now I see this body moving from my left to my right. Well, what you have to have here is confidence in the fact that your body is taking up the right portion of the net, and the angle is going to change, right? So I had this talk with a a girls goalie, like this was, I don't know, early January. But the idea was like, okay, there's times when the play changes so quickly that your angle, like you can't change fast enough. So when you take the angle of what's happening here, you've got to realize like, okay, your body is is doing most of the work, and you've taken up most of the space. Okay, so but what happens to this goalie is they get caught up in this momentum of the body of the Rutgers player moving from the goalie's left to the goalie's right, but the angle here. So right there's the foot of the this midi, and it's just 2 yards up from goal line, right? So like if he shoots it left-handed, you got to think like from the goalie's perspective. What are my options? Well, he could go 5-hole, or he could go off stick high. But the goalie here is let me just move my FPS down here a little bit. And the goalie basically right here, see how they're leaning, and their stick head is basically now outside the post. They're wasting space, right? So if this goalie were to stand, just like hold their position here, and then follow the shooter, but not necessarily lean. No need to drop the stick here at all. You can leave that stick right here, right by your stick head, like or between your head and the post. Stay there, okay, and be loaded on that right leg, just ready for a behind the back shot. Because if you don't get the shot off here, like right here, you kind of know as a goal, and this is hard to see, guys. Let me just see if I can do this for you. Um, with all the tech we have, unfortunately, sometimes these images aren't they're not high enough quality. All right, I'll put this down in the corner, and then I'll get rid of the banner. Boink, hide the banner. Okay, so like right here, you're starting to read that shooter's stick, and this is where goalies need to understand the language of lacrosse. And what can a shooter do in this situation, right? Now, I can pretty much guarantee you that this team has probably never practiced high repetition behind the back shots from 2 yards up from goal line extended on pipe right and pipe left, and they just haven't. So this goalie's kind of like trying to think on the fly, and the less we can, if when an athlete has to think on the fly, then they're slow. Okay, then they're slow. If you watch the Olympics, you hear about that a lot right now. All right, but so right here, when the shooter's hands will go away from them, and a lot of shooters, what they'll do is they'll duck their head. Their head will come down to kind of get it out of the way, and that's kind of what's happening here a little bit. But the goalie is caught up in the momentum, and he's totally leaning, like he's exploding to his right, and he takes himself basically out of the nets, right? Whereas if he were just to stay here, okay, and read those hands, and now know that ball's probably, now I'm just trying to flood. I'm not trying to catch the ball with my stick. I'm trying to flood that space, my off stick side now with my body, my gloves, my stick, both like basically I'm gonna punch both gloves over into that off stick side, and then I'm gonna try if I can get off if I can, this goalie in this particular case, he should be loaded on his right leg because he's pivoted from looking at X, right, and then he's just pivoted, and so his weight's on his right foot already, so it's like boom, I should just be able to explode into into my off stick side, right, and then so this disappointed me because I'm like, this isn't that great of a like this is almost one of those plays where if the goalie stood still, they'd probably make the save, right? And that happens occasionally. So a couple comments here. Rutgers versus LIU. Thank you. LIU goalie stick is so far out of position. Yes. The way I describe like if you look at an ice hockey goalie, is their padding, their protection, the way the leg pads have morphed, like they play a very different style. Like they get down, and we can't do that as a lacrosse goalie. Although the Duke goalie, I saw them. I don't know what he was doing. I think I know what he's doing, but I'll get to that in another video. But the idea is that they will bleed out over the posts. Maybe it's an elbow, maybe it's a glove. They may bleed out over the post, or if they stand above it because it's only 4 feet tall. But for the most part, they're trying to get as much as they can inside the post. And I don't know why lacrosse goalies think that they're good enough to let their stick hang out. It's like they're maintaining their stance, but the stick is now wasted. And the stance, we should be able to morph the stance depending on the angle of the shot, right? So there are certain times when you may stand with your feet closer together. You may stand with your stick like vertical because it's, if you stand with it at more of an angle, then you're dangling it outside the post. Now, if you're baiting here, like if this goalie just stood here and was baiting high, then dropping the stick, I get it, but you want to drop it and then put it in a position where it gives you an advantage to go anywhere else. If you just drop the stick and it's hanging outside the post, well, you're just making life hard on yourself. So I don't get that. And that's one of the things that I teach kids is that it's like, all right, listen, there are times when your stance will change, but the general rule, in my opinion, is one, you want to maintain your base save potential, like how much space are you taking up in front of the cage. Then you may modify that to bait a player to shoot someplace, right? And you may drop the stick or hide the stick or switch hands or whatever, but you just don't want to fall. Like for what happened to this goalie is the momentum. Like there's no reason for them to basically jump out of the cage because all they're doing is they're following the visual of the Rutgers player, but they're not taking into consideration, like, okay, where is this shot going to come from? Because let's say this Rutgers player shot this ball only left-handed. Let's say that was his intent. Well, as a goalie, am I going to jump out of the cage to stop that ball? No. I'm going to get here. I'm going to stay in position, and I'm thinking he's going to go 5-hole above my head. That's it. Right? That's it. But then, well, what if he goes behind the back? How does that change the angles? And I can guarantee you this goalie has not done that math, has not done that geometry to figure that out. Because when you understand that, you don't do this stuff. You just don't. You just don't. All right? So that's it. So I'm sorry for LIU. I wouldn't pray to anybody up north about the goal because they didn't help you. It was the goalie jumping out of the way of your shot. Right? So does that make sense? Any questions on that, everybody? All right, guys, thanks for watching and thanks for listening wherever you are. Do me a favor, hit the like button if you like this, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. When you're ready, head on over to lacrossegoalieuniversity.com/coaching so I can work with you and your goalie. And while you're at it, check out athletespecific.com to learn more about mental performance and high performance. You may not know this, but I work with athletes in a variety of sports. Lacrosse is my love, but man, I love athletes and the families who support them. So head on over to athletespecific.com and check it out. I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.